Hi, this is your host Apple Bhartia, and we are back with our yearly video prediction series. And today we have with us Mav Turner, Chief Product Officer at Kentik. Mav, it's great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Please give us a quick intro about Kentik and the core problem you folks are going to solve as we head into 2026.
Kentik is a network intelligence company. We take all of the observability, telemetry, metadata, inventory data across the network, whether that's a cloud network, on-prem network, customer managed service provider, data center, whatever, anything around network, get all of the data we can there, and then try to help customers and users understand what's going on in their infrastructure, right? Both from a reactive, why is this not working? Why is this service out? User complaining, and a proactive planning. How can I design my network better? How can I change my BGP peering relationships to optimize costs? Right, all of these things go into just making a better network, better internet, a better world. Right.
Thank you for hearing that. Now, it's time for you to grab your crystal ball and share what are your top predictions or major shifts you expect to see in the industry this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I think about my crystal ball is we're fortunate enough to work with some of the most advanced and leading edge technology companies and internet providers and technologists in the industry. So we get to have all these conversations and see the problems and see where traction is coming. And so this is all in the context of those conversations with our customers and our partners. And so when I think about what we're going to see now, prediction one is really around network intelligence gets operationalized. And what that means is we've talked about this, Kentik, we've seen some of our customers get value from here, but that full lifecycle integration where you're able to get this at scale, not only at a scale at one large enterprise, but across the industry at whole. A lot of teams had initiatives, right? The board said, hey, get more productive with AI. And everyone's like, what does that mean? And we've been talking with a lot of customers. And I think this year is the year that we actually really start to hit that inflection point on being able to reduce the number of outages by leveraging AI, by reducing the number of escalations that have to go to tier 2 or tier 3, et cetera, that front line can really, or even the customer themselves, get that data and be empowered by understanding what's happening by pulling the data not only from our system, but all of the other systems in the customer's environment. And I think that really, when we talk about network intelligence, obviously that's key, because if the network's not working, nothing's going to work. But I think that they're going to be able to finalize these strategies and actually implement them and get value. And whether that's integrating from a third-party vendor, homegrown systems, I think we're really going to start to see value from that. Prediction two, I really think that we're going to start to see cloud networking grow up. So what I mean by that is, when cloud first started coming around, everybody was like, great, now we don't have to worry about networking anymore. And obviously we all know that's not true, but a lot of networks and systems and applications were designed not by people who understood networking, or not by people who were really worried about networking, by people who were trying to, frankly, do as little networking as possible. And we're starting to see the maturity in the hyperscalers networking stacks reach a point where not only are the folks that were trying to build these applications, developers, SREs, et cetera, before, not really able to understand and get that full level, right? It requires an expertise. But also just the convergence of these traditional network teams with the cloud. They're learning, right? The traditional network teams are learning cloud. The complexity of cloud is increasing. The application developers are understanding the value and need of having that expert. I think all these things come together so that we actually really understand how to properly operate the networks in large complex clouds. And this is a very hybrid problem, right? There's a lot of data on-prem and systems that are connecting across multi-cloud. Obviously, we've seen cloud outages in 2025 that kind of indicate some of these weaknesses. So I think that between those issues and the maturity and the convergence of these other work streams, I think we're really going to get a lot of growing up in that industry this year. And my third prediction is I think we're going to continue to see massive growth in infrastructure spend. And there's kind of a concern here, but there's a lot of good news there, right? We're going to create more capacity. I think we're going to continue to see more AI, interesting novel AI approaches from these, both in large language and small language models, as people are starting to actually use these more. The industry is starting to understand them more, right? We're starting to get value out of them more. But the risk here and some of the challenges we don't really talk about a lot is the cost for hosting workloads is going up, right? The standard supply demand scarcity situation going on here. And those data center hosting costs for just standard workloads are going to continue to rise. And so that's kind of a consequence of this massive growth is, yes, we're adding a bunch of capacity, but that still takes time to expand and to grow. And the prioritization in these data centers and this growth is around AI workloads, but not all workloads are pure AI in that sense. So I think what we're going to start to see is again, prices will continue to rise, and this could actually trigger a kind of reevaluation of your platform architecture, right? Whereas before it was very obvious a lot of times where certain workloads should just run on-prem, right? People did the whole lift and shift and said, oh no, cloud's super expensive. Now we repatriate that, bring some on-prem. Now we have to think, do we modernize that stack to leverage the value of cloud because the cost of these data centers are rising? So that'll be interesting to see if we see that trend play out, because then again, that complexity also would get higher because you put the right workloads in the right places, and you're kind of forced to optimize that. Whereas before it was a little easier to do the math on, hey, I can just run this on-prem. It's a CapEx instead of OpEx, and I can capitalize this over 5 years. And that math starts to change as these cost rise. So that'll be interesting, and companies will need to keep an eye on any renewals they have, any expansion they're doing in these data centers, and really have larger than the normal increases planned in the budget, because that rack capacity is getting scarce.
Thank you so much for sharing these predictions with us. What are some of the biggest challenges or bottlenecks organizations will face when trying to adapt to these changes?
I think, the standard of change is hard, change is fast, and skill sets, right? I think there's just so much innovation happening in this domain, and having people that have the right skill set. This is where I obviously I work at a vendor, but I believe the value of being a partner here can help, because it's really hard to get access to these skills that are in high demand, which for the people listening to this is probably great for you, because if you're listening to this, you're probably on that higher end of skilled worker. But I think that I think that's going to be part of that.
And what are some of the biggest opportunities that will arise from these challenges? Because challenges also lead to opportunities.
To be honest, I think the opportunity is expanding pretty drastically right now, right? The ability to leverage different technologies, to the number of people I talk to, they're like, oh, I've just vibe coded this thing, right? Like, to me, it's kind of LLMs have really democratized a lot of technology, and it's something that I think more people can have access to. Whether you're a technical person that gets help from creating art from some of these models, or you're more on the creative side, but you never thought that you could actually code and build now. So it's like that democratization and opening up, I think, is a trend we saw last year, and I think that's going to really continue. And I think for people to really expand their skill sets and their knowledge base and change the way they work if they're open to it. Not everybody is. A lot of times it's hard for people to change how they operate. Totally understand that. But the opportunity is for people who have that desire to learn, desire to grow, that want to change. And my main advice there is, if you're in that category, is to just do it. Just try that, just experiment with it, get yourself over that mental barrier of, I don't know, just try it, and you'll be surprised, I think. So yeah, I'm super optimistic about where we're going in general. So yeah, hopefully you see that.
What advice do you have for enterprise leaders? What should they start doing now to be ready for this year?
Yeah, for enterprise leaders, again, that last prediction I made around data center cost, I would get in front of that as quickly as possible. If you haven't already planned for this year and expected pretty drastic price increases or locked in multi-year contracts to get you far enough out, then you might be a little bit at risk. So number one, number two, I think it's really critical to make sure that you are thinking through that the cloud network thing I mentioned earlier, right? Like how are my teams having responsibilities where? What is my strategy, right? A lot of this stuff is built so fast that we don't take the time to do the planning. Taking a little time to plan, do we really need to be multi-cloud? Do we benefit from being single cloud? I've talked to customers that weren't impacted by the AWS outages because they actually invested in a proper design and it cost them money. They had to defend it all the time to their CFO about why they're spending all this for this redundancy. It paid off here. These are some hard decisions that people will have to make, obviously, because it costs more to do that. But those need to be very intentional, and the risk profile need to be very explicitly aligned. So I think that's key. Thinking about who owns the workloads. Should these networks be run by network people, or should they still be run more on the more application teams? I think having that conversation is really important. And then finally, I think what is your agentic strategy, right? Everybody in your organization is using AI. They're using it in different places. How are you scaling this out in a way that reduces load, allows people to do higher value work, allows that full system integration to occur, and the value of all your company data and all these systems to really be raised up as opposed to being buried? I think if enterprise leaders can really prioritize making progress in that dimension, they'll see compounding returns. It's very, big opportunity there.
What is going to be yours as well as Kentik's focus or priority this year to help organizations navigate this future?
I think for us, the big thing we're trying to do is bring that intelligence that we have, right? All this data, all this observability data and metadata and inventory data, and bring these insights proactively to the customer, right? So they're not having to ask, right? And we kind of want to push it into their systems. We want to proactively say, you're going to have a problem if you don't do this. And that to be a very specific recommendation, not a, traditional interface utilization is at 98% and it's going to do a linear trend and you're going to be out of bandwidth in a month. Hopefully everybody's already at that stage, but much more sophisticated, workload analysis. I talked earlier about data center capacity. Well, the biggest issue there is if you're not optimizing your network and you're having to resend, terabytes and terabytes of data across the infrastructure, you're really going to lose out. And so I think it's really critical that we understand that and that we help customers with those proactiveness, and we not just have it buried in a platform, or if you ask our product, hey, what should I do, that it tells you, but we need to ingest and we need to be there working alongside our customers with our systems. And so that's the thing that I would, at the end of the year, hope that we can look back and say that a lot of our customers are getting that proactive awareness and making, decisions ahead of time versus, reactive firefighting, right?
Matt, thank you so much for joining me and share your predictions with us. I didn't want to put you under pressure that I'll have you back on the show at the end of the year to get the next year predictions, but also see how many of your predictions turn out to be true. Thanks for your time today, and I look forward to chatting with you again. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Swapnil. Appreciate the time.